And again, I'm just trying to get to know my neighbors. I don't know your story, but I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah.
I start, Sierra, where were you born? Where were you born and raised?
Yeah, I was born and raised, I was born in Federal Way, Washington. But I was raised, I'd say raised between like Puyallup, Maple Valley, Auburn, kind of South King County area. Didn't really necessarily have anywhere directly that I'd say that I was raised, but I like to say that my hometown, though, I'd say was probably Puyallup.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Why was that? Why were you moving around so much?
We just moved around. It was a constant, especially living with my mom, was kind of paycheck to paycheck. Didn't really have a whole lot of stability, and so once the lease was up, pretty much we would jump ship to the next spot that we could go to, pretty much. Yeah.
And did you have any siblings growing up?
I am actually the oldest of four.
Oh.
So there's me, I'm at 28, and then my sister Savannah is 26, and then Blaine is, my brother is, he just turned 20, I believe, and then Ella just turned 17, is my other sister. So, and those are from two different marriages with my dad. So my sister Savannah and I are the first one, and then Blaine and Ella are from the second marriage.
Gotcha. And so, all you guys moved to get, or you combined later?
Savannah and I were together the whole time, and we lived with my mom until I was 15, and so that's when we kind of moved around a lot with her, and really struggled to because I remember growing up struggling, looking for change in the couches, kind of scrounging up money here and there, but my mom was constantly having to borrow money from people. I remember one year my junior high actually paid for our entire Christmas, kind of thing. So we struggled there. But then my dad on the other hand, we'd go see him every other weekend, and my dad had stability. He owned a multi-million-dollar business actually. And so but we struggled as much as we did still. So it was we still had those challenges, and to this day, my mom, from my understanding, my mom has no drug or alcohol addictions or any of that problems, and so that was not something that I saw being an issue or reason behind being such low income. We just didn't have, my dad didn't necessarily share the wealth with us.
Doesn't sound like it.
Which is crazy.
Right.
Because my other brother and sister Blaine and Ella, they don't know what it's like to be without, really. When the power would go out, they'd be like, oh my God, what do we do?
Yeah,
we don't know how to do. We're just oh, it's okay.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. And
so you go to this home, it's like this, and this home it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
And you're in between those two worlds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just living in those two worlds.
And it was really, so it's once my mom lost custody of me at 15, my dad got custody of me. It was I went from living paycheck to paycheck to being in a household that had money, where I'd ask him for bus fare and he'd hand me $100 bill, and I'd be like, Dad, that's not gonna I need more than can I get something smaller, or because they're not gonna take it. And so then he'd have to give me, and then he'd just hand me another, and so it was going from barely having anything to having so much, and then it just was this weird balance of the two for me, that I didn't really know what to do.
And so when you, at 15, it was you and your sister went to live with your dad, and then he had two other kids. He
had the other
as
two,
well.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and he ended up, and at that point too, he also divorced the woman that he had been married to, the second marriage at that point. And but they had been married since I was 4.5, so they'd been married forever, but then they divorced at that point. And so then at that point I kind of had to took on that second parent role. Because
you were the oldest.
Because I was the oldest, and so I became kind of the mom for all four of us kids.
Now at this time, were you in high school?
Yeah, and at that point, I just started high school, and was basically pushed into starting high school, trying to go to high school, being in high school, doing all of that, and also being a parent and having to, whether that was calling the doctors, setting up doctor's appointments, or helping with homework, or getting groceries or whatever, making dinner. It was like, because my dad still owned the business at that time too, so it was like
he was
constantly working.
Yeah. Oh wow. And well, so in 9th through 12th grade, you were just juggling and doing that
I was doing a lot of juggling. I actually, that's kind of when I started running away from home. Actually, was the very first time I ran away, I was 16, and I didn't plan on running away. I had gotten going to raves and stuff, and so I'd come up. At that time, I was living in Auburn, and I'd come up here to Seattle for the night or something for a rave, and would like plan on going to the afterwards we'd hang out with people out here or whatever. And I remember one time just being like, I'm happy. I'm not going home.
I'm just gonna stay.
And the people I was with were like, what? You're not going home? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm staying here. I'm not I'm not leaving. I'm staying here. Like, I sent somebody with my cell phone at the time because I was like, my parents are gonna track it. So here, take the cell phone, take it with you. And it was the middle of December, and all I had was like, I remember just all I had was like a fleece blanket and some sweatpants and like a sweatshirt, and I was like, I'm happy. I'm sitting here under this bridge.
So you were at someone's house.
I wasn't at a house. I was outside under a bridge.
And that was the first time is that like technically, I guess, when you became unhoused for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, this is better. Staying under a bridge here is better than home.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, for me it was like I for the first time, like I actually felt like I was okay. I felt happy and like at a state where I was like, okay, I don't feel like I have to be so stressed trying to take care of my dad or take care of my siblings. Like, it's just me.
Right. Wow.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't go back? Did you go back?
I did end up going back because I ended up getting sick pretty quickly after that.
Yeah.
Because it was middle of winter.
Winter time.
So I ended up getting bronchitis and Mazy, and getting ended up going to the hospital. And so at that point all I wanted was my dad.
Yeah.
And so he came and got me, and I kind of did this back and forth thing with going home, coming back out, going back home. I stayed in transitional shelters. I was in a long-term transitional under 18 housing at one point up until I turned 18 at the end, like towards the end of it, because I had just kept running away from home, and my dad had basically, the last time I ran away, my dad told me that like if you run away, like this is it, if you leave again. And I left again, and I remember specifically that point they took me to Spruce Street, which was a secure crisis residential center, and it's technically, it felt like juvie. Like I had to wear what they gave me, a uniform. I had a full metal detector. Like, felt like I was going to jail, and I wasn't able to leave there until
against your will.
Yeah, I wasn't able to leave there until, like, even though I told them for like 2 weeks, telling them like my dad's not gonna come get me. My dad's not coming to get me. He's not gonna come get me. Call this place. They kept telling them to call youth care, and youth care actually came and got me the same day that they finally listened and called. And youth care came and got me the same day, and I stayed with youth care in their transitional housing program until I turned 18. And like they helped me also work on getting during my time there, I got my GED. I got some job training and got back into school, because by that point I dropped out. I ended up dropping out like second semester of my senior year, which is like I was so close. But because of the instability by that point, there was no way that I was going to actually get my diploma.
Right.
So,
well, just so we get a timeline, what year did you almost graduate high school? Or what?
It was still right on time. I still got it in 2013.
Gotcha. So you did graduate, you got your GED in 2013.
Yeah, so I would have graduated in June, but I got my GED in August.
All right.
So it was like, thankfully, and it was really because of like youth care and their programming and their like supports there, and like having that ability to like get there and do like just to have somewhere stable that I could do those things at. And so that was a really like I'm super grateful for youth care, and like I say that all the time. I always recommend their programming to people who have young people who are 13 to 25. Like, they are the place to go, like, if you need resources.
So when you turned 18, you're out of there?
I kind of had to go out. It was like I turned 18 and had to be gone, and like had to move out.
Yeah.
And so
where'd you go? Yeah.
At the time, I had done housing assessment or whatever, and so they put me into another transitional program. It's actually called, this one that I was put into was called La Patea, and it was through United Way Indians. And I was there for a very short period of time because it did not work out for me there. It was not my cup of tea, I guess. And then, like, from that point to now, it's been kind of like this back and forth. Like, I've done different transitional programs. I've done rapid rehousing. I've had my own apartment. I've lived in a house with friends. I've had multiple transitional houses that I've lived in. Currently, it's like I balance the RV and a tiny house between the two.
Okay, so you're here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah, so that way, because the only way at this point now that you're going to really get any type of housing is really through the tiny houses and the shelter system. And so I've started, so I go up to my tiny house every 3 days, and I literally go up there, I shower, I check in, and I go.
Because you have to kind of, to keep it, you have to do that?
Yeah, you have to be there every 3 days just to maintain it. So,
gotcha.
But that's the only way that, like, I can get into, like, getting, like, permanent housing or anything. Some type of stability for myself, because over the last couple of years, my own health has kind of declined, and so, like, my physical health has declined, and with that, it's like I know that I need to get into something more stable for myself, and so that's why I've kind of maintained the tiny house as much as I have.
Right. So, well, I mean, it kind of begs the question of, like, how come you're not there right now, just like permanently?
Permanently not there, just because it doesn't. I have some issues with some people there that I don't get along with, but I also don't feel totally comfortable being so I don't feel totally comfortable being there, and I have some piece of me that doesn't want to fully put myself there, and because I'm kind of afraid of putting myself all there, if something happens and I don't have this still, what would I do, kind of thing. And I mean, being here in my RV is kind of where, I mean, it's, the community is an important piece for me. I really value the community out here. They're a big part of what keeps me kind of going, and I really feel like if I'm not here, then I'm not able to be part of the health of the community.
Your community,
so,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. It's this is your neighborhood, and these are
Absolutely.
your people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's why I mean, people have asked me why I stay out here, if I have opportunity, the tiny houses or whatever, and it's because I like to be able to help out my community, to be a part of it, and provide, whether it's me cooking a meal, because I try and cook once a day, whether it's me cooking a meal and feeding a couple of different people, or it's me having the resources for somebody that needs to get a hold of another social worker or whatever, because my past and my work history is that of a social worker. I've worked.
Tell me more about that. We talked about that last time I saw you. Talked, and what was it was called Bird something?
Yeah, the Mockingbird Society.
The Mockingbird Society.
Yes,
Tell me more about that.
For them, so that's the longest job that I've maintained, and that was really, they were focused on really, they're helping to improve foster care in the state of Washington and end youth homelessness, and they did that by engaging people with lived experience to share their stories. And similar to how I'm sharing mine with you today, was really to make it so that the legislators and the decision makers and the people, the policy makers and people who have the position of power see from real people what's going on. And it was done so that we had this whole cycle going where it was at the beginning of the year at the beginning of the cycle we talk about these are the problems that are going on in our world, and then from there, we would move on to like, okay, these are the problems, like here's a solution, and then we take on that solution, and then we'd go and we talk to the policymakers and figure out whether it was a funding or a law change or what we needed to get that policy changed, and then we'd go and we'd advocate for that. And it was like this really cool like opportunity, really, I think, and that kind of got me my foot in the door, I'd say, with my social work experience. So since then, I've worked for DESC, so the Downtown Emergency Services Center. I've worked for Catholic Community Services. I've worked for the Scofflaw Mitigation Team and the Interfaith Task Force on Homelessness. I've worked for New Horizons Ministries, and also worked for what's no longer an agency anymore, but used to be Peace for the Streets by Kids of the Streets. And so I've kind of had my fair share in the pool of social services. So like that's the other piece that I feel like I bring to the table for a lot of people out here, is like I know like if somebody wants a service or wants like some support, whether it be getting Suboxone or getting methadone or getting in a shelter or just talking to somebody,
people are go talk to Sierra.
Yeah, I typically know like where to tell them to go to.
Right, gotcha.
And a lot of like I'm also kind of that I tend to be kind of the beam, or I guess the bridge between a lot of like some of the people out here like who maybe aren't ready to talk to a case manager or whatever completely. Like I've been able to bridge that gap between the two for some of the folks out here, which has been really cool. So it's another reason that I don't totally just go and be gone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, something that I've noticed, I started this in January, and there's a community, very tight community. Mm-hmm. Like everyone is surviving together.
Yeah.
And it's not perfect, but everyone's doing it together.
Yeah,
and
no,
very
definitely.
tight knit.
No, that is for sure, and that's like the one thing that I think that gets forgotten a lot is like a lot of people think that you could just pick us up and put us into housing somewhere and it's going to solve the solution, but it's like it's not, because like at the same time so many of us, like you said, our community, we've worked together, we've developed relationships, we've built partnerships and things that work and don't work, and we figured out how to make that balance be what it is. And it's like that's something we've talked about in the past is like it'd be really cool is if they actually found like a spot that they could put everyone that's here all together, so because we've already built a system that works for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, yeah, everyone in Ballard goes somewhere.
And that's the thing is so often that's the reason a lot of people return to homelessness is because they get split up and they get put into different places that aren't their communities, and then what they know is here. Like people know Ballard, that's where they know, and you put somebody in Northgate and they're going to come right back to Ballard.
Come back, that's right. Well,
So,
I mean, yeah, talk about sweeps a little bit.
Yeah, sweeps. It's like it's crazy the way that when they happen and they do it, because they're not ever actually like they don't stay consistent with them. That's the thing. Like sometimes they're gonna be really hard on the sweeps, and they're gonna come through and they're gonna sweep and they're gonna tow and they're gonna take things. Like I had at one point, like the reason I got my tiny house is I had 2 RVs, and I was making the second space as kind of like my own like think like quiet space or whatever for myself. And then when they came through and they swept in February, they took that RV from because I didn't have the ability that at that time to move both of them in time.
Gotcha. So when they sweep an RV, they're like, you need to move it.
Yeah.
Get it out of here.
Get it out of here.
Or we'll tow it.
Yeah, and they've blocked off the roads before. Like I've one of my good friends one time was helping with a sweep, and she was helping drive one of the RVs, and the cops had like blocked the road, and she was like, you're gonna have to move. Like they were trying to basically tell us that like they weren't gonna let her through, and she was like, you're gonna move, or I'm gonna I'm just gonna keep going because I am in an RV and you're standing there. So like, but they do, and because they're trying to get all the RVs off the streets. Like, I mean, that's like even like this whole safe lot that they've talked about opening up. Like the agreement is if you go into that safe lot, you have to sign your title over to your vehicle.
Oh really? That's the safe lot. It's like you can park here.
Yeah.
But it's ours.
But it's ours now, and that way, and when you get into a housing opportunity after this, you can't take this RV and then we're gonna get rid of it. Basically.
I mean, that would never happen with people who are housed.
No.
They never say, "Hey, we have some parking you can park your car here," but then it's gonna be our car.
Yeah.
Like that would just never happen to people who are housed.
And it's like, but because we're homeless, it's like.
That's right.
And they also do and they say that they're gonna be doing like regular vehicle inspections of the, and it's like you wouldn't go and inspect somebody's house.
Yeah, they have regular house inspections for the housed people.
Yeah. No, and the sweeps, it's like they displace people. It's like, like what is it like once we're in a spot and somewhere, like we create a community, we get something built up, and it's like a lot of the times it's like we do have like people that are like, we get tents and we get everything, and people like lose so many of their things. It's like when they sweep, people lose their documents, and you can't get housing if you don't have those documents. And like they're supposed to be like keeping our things, and they don't, and they're really they're selective over when they, like I said, they're not consistent with the sweeps. So sometimes it's like you might get the little slips on your vehicle that they give us that say like tow notice or whatever. You might get that like 5-6 times, and then they'll come and sweep, or you might get it one time, and they're gonna be here.
So you're always kind of living on like.
Yeah, you never really know. Yeah,
when
and it's.
My home's gonna be.
Yeah, and it's like.
Displaced.
Yeah, and like when you.
Stressful.
When you don't know, it's like, because that's the other reason too. Like, if your vehicle doesn't run, for example, like, because a lot of these vehicles, I know that they don't. They have it like. Minor mechanical issues like mine right now, I don't have an ignition for it, and I don't have like as far as I know, I think I might need a new alternator.
Yeah, you
I
don't
know for sure,
right?
Because like we replaced the starter recently, but it was still kind of having some issues before.
So it's not running.
Yeah.
And so if they sweep it, they're gonna tow it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, and so I basically have to have like somebody else who has a vehicle that's running and is willing to tow me. And be prepared to like have it moved hopefully before they come by, because a lot of the times if you don't get it moved before then it's because it's like, I mean, I've not been in any like major like tow like sweeps where they've shown up with tow trucks again since February when they did tow my RV.
Yeah. And then just real quick on that RV, it's like it's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
It's like, in an impound yard somewhere right now?
Yeah, and thankfully I had just spent the time like completely gutting that RV so I can get it cleaned out.
Gotcha, good.
And like remodel, like, so we can get remodeling, because it had mice and rats and stuff in it. And so thankfully, like all of my stuff was out of it. But at that point, like at that time, like I had that RV and I had this RV, and ultimately I was given the decision, the choice. I had to choose between the two. And thankfully, all my stuff was out of that one. And in this one, because like this one here technically isn't in my name. So it was like, this one would have been the one that got impounded, I would not have been able to get anything back at all. Right. Like that other one, I could have.
All your belongings are just.
Tried to get stuff like.
Toast.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I had a car at one point, somewhat recently, and they came and they towed my car away, and my car wasn't illegally parked. It was parked right next to my friend's van that was parked next to my RV. Like, they just decided to tow it one day, and unfortunately I lost it with all of my things in it. And
yeah, like, everything that's in it. So I mean, even if you were to say I'm gonna get my car back, it's like whatever, how much a day or a night at the tow place. Yeah, it's just like it's so it's a loss.
Ridiculous. Yeah. A lot of people, a lot of the times when their vehicle gets impounded, it's done. It's like we just kind of chalk it up to life. We chalk up everything up to it.
The people that live in their vehicle and it gets towed, it's like now they are really don't have that anymore either.
Yeah, so that's why it's so important to, like, for me at least, it's so important to make sure that I have somebody here or whatever, because they can't tow a vehicle that's occupied.
If you're inside it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. I mean, they can call the police and get you removed or whatever, I believe is kind of the process, but legally they can't tow an occupied vehicle. So, like, if you have somebody in there, it makes it a little more difficult. But So it's like that's why it's important to find, like for me at least, I'm constantly making sure that there's somebody here.
Yeah.
Just so that it doesn't.
Which is again part of your community.
Yeah.
Hey, can you do this?
And we all and we like to have, I mean, people help each other out with those kinds of things and stay with one another kind of things. So.
Are you in contact with your siblings? Your sister?
I recently had my younger siblings came up to visit me somewhat recently, which was really cool. I was in a spot, or at least parked in a spot that I was able to like have everything like cleaned up real tight and nice, that it was like they came into the space where like we were able to sit down outside and have like a sit down, and like they can come inside, and it was all kind of put together for me. And that was at the beginning, that was in like July. And then I'll say like mid-August, I kind of had somebody get a little, who got upset with me and ended up like completely doing a number of damages into my RV, and like kind of threw my stuff around and let people kind of have a free-for-all of my things. And so I'm still trying to get that back together again. But it was really cool that I was able to, at least before that happened.
You're like you're hosting them, right?
It was nice enough. I was in a space that was presentable enough and okay enough to like have them show up, which was cool.
And what about your dad?
My dad and I don't really talk. He's out in the peninsula. We kind of like, we have a very like enmeshed relationship where like basically it's like my friends told me like my dad had sent me a message recently saying that he's having a really rough time going through a breakup or whatever, and they were like, you can't be your dad's rebound.
Right, because of the enmeshment, right?
Yeah. So him and I don't really talk. And then my mom, the last time I really had any conversation with her was a few years back, and she had actually called the police on me and told them that her estranged 24-year-old daughter was sending her harassing text messages at all odd hours of the night, when at that point I was just like trying to help my sister get her things back. And so I'd sent her 2 text messages that just happened to be late night messages because I worked swing shift.
Gotcha.
And the police, I had got a voicemail from the Thurston County Sheriff's Department telling me that my mother had called in. And so my mom now lives in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho, and that's it, yeah. So.
Man. Sarah, is there anything you'd want to say to the people of Seattle?
I think more people need to like think about like what causes people to be out here, and like don't judge a book by their cover, because a lot of the times like there's so much more to each of us in our stories and our like past that people don't know, that it's just taking that little bit of time to sit down with somebody that like you'll learn so much more. Like, I mean, like not a lot of people know that I worked for all of the agencies that I've worked for, and I've done all the work that I've done. So it's important, I think, to take that time and really get to know your community, and really realize that like we're all just, I mean, I've always said that every single one of us is just a paycheck away from being in the same spot. So just getting to know what you got there.
Awesome. It's good to hear your voice. Thanks so much for your time. Yeah. I appreciate it. I'm glad we got to finally do this.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you got it. Let me grab that. I gotta take a couple photos.
Yeah.